Joining us now is Representative Fred Upton of Michigan, Chairman of the House Energy and Commerce Committee. Representative Upton, thanks so much for being here.
Kathleen, it's great to be with you, but it's always Fred.
Oh, thank you, Fred. Well, the administration plans to release 30 million barrels of oil from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. Do you see this actually having an impact on prices, or is this nothing more than a cheap political move by the Obama administration?
Let's face it, it is a bad idea. I can remember the gas lines back in the 70s. This was an effort by every administration, Republican or Democrat, to put oil away for when, in fact, there could be a blockade, there could be some major disruption of oil, so that the U.S. could continue to function with this safety net of oil in the bank, in essence. By using it to offset prices, takes that emergency blanket away from us.
Now, this is being done by the International Energy Agency in conjunction with a number of countries. 60 million barrels of oil will be released, of which the U.S. will release half. The argument here being made by the administration is that it's needed to offset the disruption in the oil supply caused by the unrest in Libya. What is your take on that?
Well, you know, the unrest in Libya started last March. It's almost July. If this was a tool that they wanted to use to offset the big spike that we saw in gas prices last April and May, when gas prices were, at least in my district, $4.20, $4.30 a gallon, you know, it might have been a different story. Today, gas prices are about $1 less than that. But again, this takes away from the potential down the road of having a reserve to offset a complete disruption from the Middle East.
This makes us vulnerable, you're saying.
That's exactly right. It wasn't set up. The SPRO, the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, was not set up to serve as a price indicator here. It was set up for if we actually have a disruption like we had back in the 70s.
Would you say this is a potential national security problem in the making?
Well, it certainly would be if they, in the administration, at least from what I read in the press today, they're uncertain as to whether they're going to extend it beyond the 30 days. That would really be unsettling, I think, if they decided to do that, versus supporting legislation we've been able to get to the House floor and through committee that actually does increase our domestic production here. You know, we use about 19 million barrels a day. We only produce 7 million. We ought to be focusing more on production as people understand supply and demand, rather than take this, in essence, out of our savings account with the SPRO that we have down south.
Now, President Obama has gone on record saying he doesn't mind gas being $4 a gallon. Any idea why he doesn't and what it is that he wants?
You know, most Americans understand supply and demand. And as the world economy begins to build back up again, and we want that to happen, we know that demand is going to increase, but sadly, supplies have stayed pretty stable. So when that happens, the price goes up. Thus, the focus ought to be on expansion of domestic resources to offset the otherwise production losses. A third of our oil comes from the Gulf. And already, because we've said no to more permits and plans over the last year, production has actually declined by more than 100,000 barrels a day than what was projected just last fall. That's not the right approach that we ought to be taking.
Now, you've been very critical of the Obama administration's oil and drilling policies. What do you think his biggest mistake has been here, and what should he be doing instead? I know you talk about exploration and production.
We need a policy that particularly begins to send the message to the speculators on Wall Street that we're going to be serious about domestic production. Why is it that the United States gave Brazil $2 billion to develop their oil resources, and yet we've said no here? Why is it that we're not working with Canada, our very good neighbor to the north? They will be producing more than 3 to 4 million barrels a day from oil sands, and we've stalled on the application to build a pipeline here, hundreds of thousands of jobs. And if we continue to say we may not be interested, Canada is going to turn around and build that pipeline not to the U.S., but instead to Vancouver, and they're going to be, selling it off to the Chinese. That's not where we ought to be headed.
House Republicans have passed several bills recently aimed at addressing America's energy strategy. What can you tell us about these bills, and do any of them have a reasonable shot at passage, or is Senator Harry Reid standing in the way?
Well, so far we've not seen any action in the Senate, which has been certainly frustrating. We're going to try to push their hand on a couple issues. We're going to be doing a pipeline safety bill through the House probably this September, something that is expired. And I think we can get a better bill than what existing law provides today. That's got to be done. So we'll see if the Senate will come to the table on that. The bill that we passed out of the Energy and Commerce Committee this week, which would get a decision on this Canadian pipeline, passed with pretty good bipartisan support. So, and that bill is expected on the House floor as early as next month. So there are some pretty good prospects, I think, for trying to increase domestic supply, at least North American supply, particularly when you include Canada, which will offset some of the Middle Eastern oil that we continue to import.
All right, Representative Fred Upton, Chairman of the House Energy and Commerce Committee, thanks so much for being here.
You bet, Kathleen.